There's fully in a bit of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. It's like after the 5th hour of driving, you've kind of had enough. Anyway, I'd just like to say thank you very much for agreeing to do this, because I know you have like many hats that you wear. You wind up, you're looking after the farm here. You're sort of like flogging nitrogen all around. You're sort of like a judge for the shorthorn cattle, and you've just been to the Highlands. So thank you very much indeed for agreeing to do this.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I first heard you on a Zoom concert. I think it was for the Central, and you did a song which was Cush Lass, like a love song to a cow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what I love about what you do is there's this authenticity that you were there with your head in the flanks of a cow, and you thought, oh, I'll write a song. So, when do you find yourself time to be able to write?
Well, my time for writing songs is literally in the milking parlour at 5 o'clock in the morning, when I'm surrounded by cows and the soft hum of the milking engines and the pulsators pulsing, and an odd cow lowing, and nothing else, and I'm absorbed in the job that I'm doing physically, but somehow it allows my mind to drift, and that's where I get all my good ideas when I'm milking cows at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Now I've heard some tales about where the best place to write is.
Yes.
Some people like to have, set it up like it's a Dutch cafe with the smell of coffee in the air, and other people wind up saying it's like when I'm in the shower. But it seems to be this thing of where there's like a lull where you have nothing else but your thoughts to allow you to use your imagination.
I don't know if it's the fact that you're physically engaged as well. You're active, but there's part of your brain that's released. I don't know, it works for me.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, there's as many different ways of writing as there are songwriters. And we've spoken a lot on the phone over the past, I don't know, about 6 months or so since we started corresponding. And we're both very passionate about songwriting, indeed. And you've got, I think what it is that draws me to your work, and I'm very impressed with it, by the way, if you haven't guessed by now, is it's the authenticity of it, the singing, and that's something that's very important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, I would like to think so. I mean, it's something that I've come to obviously very late in life. You've been involved with music, from your teens, and it's something that I've really come to in the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, really? As short a period as that?
Yeah.
All right. I thought that you'd kind of been like a closet songwriter, and then all of a sudden...
I've done an odd one, but it's only this last 5 or 6 years that I've really been, taking it seriously and actively doing it.
Well, as actively as resting with like a herd of cows can be.
Yeah. No, the one that sort of got me started, I did a parody of the George Formby's When I'm Cleaning Windows, called When I'm Inseminating.
You might need to do some explaining here.
Well, yes, because one of my jobs is a part-time artificial cow inseminator, which is taking me onto lots of farms in Cheshire. And it's such a strange occupation, and it's absolutely loaded with comic potential. And this song came to me, and we'd had I'm not the only one that does it. There's a team of us in Cheshire, which is a very cow-intense area of the country. And we had a social do, a chap who was celebrating 50 years as a cow inseminator.
I love the way that you're choosing your words so carefully.
And I come up with this, and I performed it on the night, and of course it went down very well with me fellow inseminators. That sort of set me on a bit of a journey, Tony, to be honest.
Was it the fact that something that just popped into your head was appreciated by other people? Do you think that was the main impetus?
Yeah, and then I think I got the performing bug.
All right. Yeah, 'cause, I mean, we've talked about that as well, because I think you're a very natural performer. I mean, I had to do it for a living, so you come on like a thermonuclear device, basically. You've got to get people's attention, otherwise you get paid off. But that's another story, and it's not about me. So that was like your first song, but I do know that you've got like songwriting within the family.
Yeah, I think my dad was always clever with words, and he would write poems. And we did a lot of like singing in the car, and when I was little, family parties, everybody had that piece, didn't everybody?
The party piece,
the party piece. And that was still going on. My granddad, he knew all the old songs. And he would sing, "Oh Nanny's Amaze" and all of those sort of songs. So I grew up with that. But my great grandfather, who I didn't know, but he went down the pit when he was 10, which would have been 1886 at South Meadowsley, which is the year that the strike that was celebrated in Tommy Armstrong's song.
Mm.
And fortunately we have got a couple of his songs, and they're fantastic.
In what form have you got them? Is it as written music or?
No, well, I'll tell a lie, because it was the one that I got from my auntie, was written down, and I sort of set that to music. And then we discovered another one from a distant cousin, and two very different songs, but when you talk about authenticity, to have coal mining songs from somebody who went down the pit in 1886, and he spent 60 years in the pit.
Wow. And that's the area you're from, isn't it? Beside there, where were you originally born?
Yeah, I was born in Newcastle, so I am a bona fide Geordie. My first memories would be living at Wallsend. We lived virtually next door to the Rising Sun pit.
All right, yeah, I know where that is. Yeah.
Which at the time was the biggest deep coal mine in Europe.
Mm.
And my granddad worked at the pit. And that's some of my very earliest memories. Where there's the muck and the dirt.
Right. I mean, my father was a butcher, but we lived in Tynedock and South Shields, and would often see the men coming back from the pit. I mean, they look like devils. I remember them. It's kind of like just like little bits of white, or like around their eyes, but everything else just like a slick, like an oily black colour to them. And would hear them and see them, but I mean, there was never any chance of me ever going down the pit.
No.
Because I mean, it wasn't within our family's experience. But I believe, I mean, we've talked about it when you've said that there was a chance that you might have gone down the pit.
Well, not me, no, but my granddad went down, and me other granddad, and both my great granddads, and my dad briefly went down, but he hated it.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't stick with it. But I was never going to go down the pit. But we moved, when I was 5, we moved to Morpeth, which was very different,
Yeah.
Very, very pleasant place to be brought up.
Yeah.
Sort of semi-rural. And yeah, I was brought up in Morpeth, really. Which, it was fine, except they all spoke a different language to what I was used to and what.
Yeah, but there is this thing that people wind up thinking that anybody north of, say, York, we're all Geordies, where there's quite a range of different accents.
Yeah, they have a language all of their own, quite fascinating. Yeah.
Or Pethian.
Yes, absolutely.
I should imagine so. You were saying that you came to this sort of quite late, like as a songwriter. I mean, having like dabbled, but and you also said, and I was quite surprised, you said you'd never been in a folk club.
No.
Until you were 60.
Turned 60. Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that must have been quite a shock, or to your system.
Well, I would say, you know, we're down here in Cheshire, and I think I must have Googled it, and there was a chap up at Macclesfield who turned out to be Nigel Hamill, who was starting up this folk night.
Is this not the leather smithy?
The leather smithy.
Yeah.
And it sounded very welcoming, and so I went up to that, and of course realised that as soon as I opened my mouth and he opened his mouth, I realised that we'd virtually led parallel lives, because Nigel's in farming, but he's been involved in the folk scene for most of his life, and then various other clubs in Cheshire, and you know, I have to say, you know, it's been a good experience. Everybody's been very warm and welcoming, and what I do was different to what a lot of other people do, but you know, that's part of the joy of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a unique style, but I was quite surprised because when I first heard you, it just sounded so much like a folk song, and the tune that went with it was very, I would say, like very folky, you know. So, but you write in quite a number of styles as well, don't you? I mean, the subject matter is very broad.
It's mostly agricultural or industrial. It's mostly related to work in one form or another.
But you have a great love of history.
Big love of history. Yeah. So I write about things that I know about directly, but I write about things that I've heard stories about.
And you read quite extensively as well, I mean, around the subject.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in history. But my songwriting is basically it's storytelling.
Yes.
In form, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's just a story with a tune to it.
Yeah, most of them are stories with a tune to them.
Yeah. And as well, you do some like comic songs, which I would say they're like funny stories that you put a tune to. Yeah.
And they always go down well. Well, when you go to a folk club.
Yeah, because otherwise it's doom, gloom and death.
Yeah, but then it's also good, as you know, it's good to, if you're doing a set of songs, it's great to mix them up.
Yeah, like light and shade is
absolutely,
is the thing, yeah. People can only take so much death and doom, but it's like I see a folk club almost like an evening's television. You've got like dramas, you've got sad stories, you've got like happy stories, you've got things that are maybe even like flippant or throwaway, but it's a good mix. Yeah, I mean, you introduced me, and I really didn't know about him until you wrote a song about Lord Londonderry. I mean, I knew about the strikes and the pits in the 1830s and sang a few songs already then. How did that song in particular come about?
Just a fluke, really. I was talking to a friend of mine, Charlie Chomsey, who you probably know.
Oh, Charlie. I know Charlie, yeah. Made up name.
And Charlie's a great chap, and we were speaking on the phone, and somehow the subject of this statue in Bristol I got tipped in the water. Coulson. And Charlie just made an off-the-cuff remark. If ever there's a statue wanted tipping, and it was Lord Londonderry. So then I googled Lord Londonderry, and it turns out, yes, he was right. He was a bit of a Baden, yes. Yes.
Can we all just have a communal spit when you say his name? You're only after 3, 1, 2, 3. That's it, yeah. Well, as it happens, I mean, it's led me to realise that things like Jobling and the Seven Lads of Jarrah, all like interwoven within that. So, I mean, do you find that the songs are, they give a gateway for other people to find out about things?
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, we're not trying to educate anybody, but it's like highlighting something that appeals to you and your enthusiasm for that. So like it goes on in that kind of direction. What about when you were a child? I mean, we haven't really spoken about that. Were you interested in language as a child? As English?
Yeah, I think I was. Looking back, I didn't think about it at the time, but yes, accents and dialects, quite. I think most of us are tuned into, when we hear a different accent, a different dialect, we just tune into it that much more. And I find that, because obviously I've got a northeast accent, and that can be an advantage, when you're in a different part of the country, because I think people do just tune into you a bit.
Well, the other thing is, everybody then does the little bit of Geordie, which makes it sound as if we've come from Trinidad. It's just like, well, you like,
yeah. But I do write in dialect a bit, but I'm wary about, you've got to make it intelligible, and you don't want to make a song just laden with words that nobody's used for 100 years. I think you can drop an odd word in, and then people will maybe take the time to find out what that word is, rather than just, I've seen
bombard
dialect competitions where people just want to cram as many odd words
in. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you've done a song which is called a bona fide Geordie, which is great, really funny. And I've done one, so like, me feather was he mine all.
Yes, I love that.
Which is basically because the people like trying to force themselves to have like a working class background, and it just sounds quite forced. It's like, we do you think you're talking, Tiv? Kind of thing. 4 pints of bitter in the snow bell, kind of thing. You go, you didn't talk like that when you were at school.
Yeah.
Is the thing. So when do you find yourself with the opportunity to sing? And it's a two-part question. When do you find yourself the opportunity to perform these songs?
Well, you've got to put yourself about a bit, haven't you? You've got to make the effort, and it's become a hobby. I've been work obsessed for the last 40 odd years. I've never had time to do much outside of work, but I found an outlet with this, and sometimes you've just got to force yourself on a winter's night to go out to the folk club, and when you get there, it's great. You have a good time.
Oh yes, of course.
You have a good time.
Well, I mean, I'm such a big fan of like live music. Yeah. Whatever anybody does, at least they've taken the time to perform it.
Yeah.
And bring it out. And you've done a few like guest spots as well, haven't you?
Yeah. I've done locally, and then I've taken part in the Northumbrian gathering in Morpeth, which is wonderful. And last year I went to the Rothbury Traditional Music Festival, and I got the chance to perform at the concert in the Mart, which is just the best thing ever for me.
But you would have known the Mart from
I've been in the Mart when it was full of sheep,
Yeah. I'm saying nothing about a folk audience. Okay, I'm not saying anything. Yeah. But and recently you did a house concert for me, which was absolutely fantastic.
Great, yeah, it was super. Yeah.
How do you find when quite often say like you'll get like a floor spot here and a floor spot there, but when you've got a chance to do a whole set yourself, I mean that's very freeing, isn't it?
Well, I'm done anything like the stuff that you've done. I've probably only done that once or twice. But it's interesting to put a set together. And, seemed to go well.
Well, it went very well. I mean, people are still talking about it. There was one thing we talked about the other day, and you said that you went to an open mic session where you don't think there was anybody under the age of, above the age of like 22 when you were kind of...
Yeah, right in the middle of Manchester, in the trendy part of Manchester. And
that's everywhere in Manchester,
well, maybe,
you know that.
Maybe. But, no, I sort of made myself do that because I knew I'd be way out of my comfort zone. I feel very comfortable in the folk club. And let's face it, you know, everybody in the folk club, they're probably 20 years either side of my age, and they get where I'm coming from, what I'm talking about. But to go to a trendy pub in Manchester and perform in front of a load of 30-year-olds, so that was a challenge. But it was quite. We had a good night. Yeah, it actually went. It actually went very well.
You were allowed to say that. Everybody came up and shook your hands and told you how much they enjoyed what you did.
Well, the guy who looked at me, who was organising it, who gave me quite a withering look when he first saw me. he did come up to the end and he says, "I'd love you to come back."
Yeah. Well, this is it. I mean, people can respond to something that's got like a genuine enthusiasm and like quality to it. Well, we haven't touched on the subject. You said that you've been to all of these different agricultural shows and like the gatherings and things, but you've won one or two trophies, haven't you, for your songwriting?
I've entered some songwriting competitions. I think I did that quite well. That was a bit of a gateway into it, to be honest, because I had it in my mind that I had something on in Morpeth as I was growing up, and again, the wonders of Google. So Morpeth Gathering, saw there was songwriting competitions, entered it, was lucky enough to win it. The following year I performed, because they have a winners concert, and that was where I met Charlie. And
another winner?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Charlie came to me and he said, you ought to go to the bridge in Newcastle. He said, you go down well there. And I again Googled it, found out about the bridge. I
don't know, you young people in your phones.
Right. Because Nigel, it was quite funny because I would go to the bridge, and Nigel, who'd been at the bridge many years ago, and I phoned him up and I said, what's it like for parking? Will I get parked all right? He says, I think you'll get parked all right. I said, when's the last time you were there? He says, 1972.
Well, he probably came in a hansom cab, knowing Charlie. Yeah.
No, but that was Nigel. But Nigel and I, we did go up together. We had a good night there. But it's a special place, the bridge.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I go very regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a great place to try out like new songs and things like that. So I know you've done some recordings with Nigel. So what are you going to do with those recordings? I mean, he was asking me if I knew how to put them on YouTube.
I have put some recordings on YouTube. I'm not very technical.
Yeah.
I did have some help with that, so yeah, I'll probably try to put some things on YouTube. I quite like to, which I've done again with assistance, to put some sort of visuals to them. Some of them. Yeah. Historic songs, and put some images to them. I think that works.
Well, I mean, you've done some where it's just, you've obviously sort of had your phone the other side of the barn, and you've just like sung a song and done it. I mean, which is great. So like,
my best,
don't be a farmer's wife. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Don't Marry a Farmer. Was actually done where we're sitting now. My daughter filmed me on her phone. During lockdown, and she put it onto Facebook, and it ended up with 75,000 views.
Yeah, no, well, it's because it's an incredibly funny song. So,
well, I think probably 70,000 of those were farmers' wives.
I love the idea of that. Yeah. Oh, great! You'd be like a pin-up boy for the farmers' wives.
Yes.
Yeah. So. What I'd like to do is, like, at the end of this, in the comments for this video that I'll make, I'll put like some links to some of your videos if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned several of your songs. I could never, as I said before, I could never manage Cush Lass because it would be like Ethel Merman trying to sing like Bar Bar Black Sheep, you know. It's like Bar Bar Black Sheep,
That's right.
like that. Well, one last thing. We've talked about, like I say, we've spoken and sort of like exchanged songs that have been partly written and ideas, and you know, we're talking about what the next project's going to be. But I was quite surprised because you mentioned like one of your favourite songwriters, who is
Jez Lowe.
and another one that surprised me. He was part of a duo. The other one was called Garfunkel.
Oh yeah, Paul Simon, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, Paul Simon. Yeah.
Not that I'm saying anything about Jez Lowe.
No, Paul Simon, I just, in my mind,
Yeah.
he's, the man's a poet. I mean, his lyrics are just sublime.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it was quite surprising. I think that quite often people think that if you write folk songs, you go to live in a hermit's cottage and only listen to half-deaf shepherds dragged from the hills. I mean, I'm a huge fan of.
Half-deaf shepherds.
No, you believe it or not, punk. But I mean, I love punk and pop. You know, but I don't write in that stuff. Well, actually, I do now. But so what do you think it is? I mean, apart from the poetry of Paul Simon, is it the content or the breadth or?
He has this ability with words to conjure. He's very evocative,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not explicit with his lyrics. He gives room for you to make your own, to fill in the spaces with your own imagination, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot and saying, you know, give me an analysis of Paul Simon. It's like, if you like it, then that's good enough.
Yeah,
know.
sometimes he just hints at things, and he just sort of think, well, there's another story behind that. But his use of language, I think, is just, to me, he touches me. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And we're both huge fans of Jez Lowe.
Yeah,
of course. And Jez Lowe, if you ever want to be spoken at by somebody from South Shields, the invitation is there. Anyway, it's just been great. Like having a chat. That's the whole point. It's not like an interview. It's just like a chin wag. What we should do is we should record like some of our phone calls, because it's a bit like Men and God and sealing wax and cabbages and kings. But I mean, it's lovely to hear your songs, and you always come up with something different. There was one thing. There's always one more thing. You seem to be driven to try new things in your songwriting. Would you say that that's the way that you are with your songwriting? Like a different aspect, a different subject matter, a different way of presenting it?
Yeah, I think I have a sort of a broad, work in a broad parameter, but within that, yeah, there's enough scope to visit different things. Yeah.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I'm a huge fan.
Thank
and
you.
I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed for doing
Thanks
this.
for asking me.
Oh, no, we've been wanting to do this for ages, and just things never quite worked out.
But we've done it.
We've done it. Hooray! Thanks so much. That was great. Lovely. Oh, I can't get out the chair. Oh, this one wasn't working. Neither was this one. Or this one.
Sorry?
I'm joking.